The sky shakes. It's not thunder, it's something much more threatening. In a matter of seconds, a 60-ton combat tank, armored, protected, impenetrable, is turned into smoking scrap metal. The weapon that did this doesn't need missiles. It doesn't need smart bombs. Just pure, brutal, calculated firepower. The A-10 Warthog is back, and this time, it's more lethal than ever. A few miles off the coast of Latin America, in the warm skies of the Caribbean, the United States is conducting live fire tests. The target? State-of-the-art armor systems. The result? Total devastation. But the real question isn't what this plane can do. It's why it's doing it now, and who this message is really intended for. As Venezuelan radars pick up every movement, as neighboring governments watch in silence, one question echoes through the corridors of power in Caracas. What does it mean when the U.S. Air Force's most feared aircraft returns to training with live ammunition just a few miles from Latin America? This is the story of a machine that refuses to die, and of a region that may be about to feel its power. The 1970s, the Cold War. NATO faces an existential threat. Thousands of Soviet tanks ready to invade Western Europe across the German plain. The American response? An aircraft built backwards. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was not designed to be beautiful. It was designed to kill tanks, and it was built around its weapon, not the other way around. Imagine a cannon so powerful that the aircraft had to be developed just to carry it through the skies. That's exactly what the A-10 is. A 7-ton flying cannon with wings. Its appearance is unmistakable. Flat nose, straight thick wings. 2 gigantic engines positioned above the fuselage, far from the ground, far from enemy fire. Everything about it screams toughness, survival, lethality. Pilots call it the Warthog, and there's a reason. This plane can fly with half a wing torn off. It can return to base with a destroyed engine. It can survive direct hits from 23mm anti-aircraft guns. It was made to absorb punishment and give back twice as much. While modern jets fly at Mach 2 at an altitude of 15,000 meters, the A-10 flies low, very low. At 150 meters above the ground, at 560 kilometers per hour, it stalks the battlefield like a predator. Its targets don't see it coming. By the time they finally hear the roar of its turbines, it's too late. It carries up to 7 tons of weaponry. Maverick missiles, guided bombs, rockets. But none of that matters compared to the monster installed in its nose. The GAU-8 Avenger, the 30mm rotary cannon, the beating heart of the beast. If the A-10 is legendary, the GAU-8 Avenger is mythical. 7 barrels, electric rotation. Rate of fire, 3,900 rounds per minute. That's 65 bullets per second, each weighing almost half a kilo, each traveling at 1,070 meters per second. When the trigger is pulled, the sound is not that of gunfire. It is a continuous roar. 2 seconds of fire releases 130 projectiles. A tank that is hit does not explode like in the movies. It simply collapses. The turret breaks off. The armor fragments. The crew has no chance. But the real terror of the GAU-8 lies in its ammunition. Over decades, the United States has developed different types of projectiles for this cannon. But the most lethal are the PGU-14B, depleted uranium armor-piercing projectiles. Depleted uranium is a metal 1.7 times denser than lead. When it hits armor at supersonic speeds, it doesn't ricochet. It pierces. It cuts through steel like a hot knife through butter. And as it pierces, it ignites, creating an internal explosion that incinerates everything inside the vehicle. Reactive armor, which explodes on contact to deflect projectiles, is useless against it. The volume of fire is so intense that the first projectile detonates the reactive armor, and the next 40 projectiles pierce the exposed metal. And now, in the skies over the Caribbean, the United States is testing new variations of this ammunition. Reports indicate that improved versions of the projectiles are being evaluated against simulations of modern armor, such as that used by Russian, Chinese, and Venezuelan tanks. The results? Classified. But witnesses report targets obliterated in seconds. 120mm armor pierced like paper. Anti-tank capability elevated to unprecedented levels. The message is clear. There is no safe armor when the A-10 is in the skies. But why here? Why now? And why so close? In recent weeks, A-10 Warthog units have been deployed to U.S. bases in the Caribbean and Florida. Routine training exercises according to the Pentagon. But nothing about the A-10 is routine. Aircraft designed to destroy Soviet armor in Europe now fly over tropical waters, carrying out simulated attack missions, firing at targets that replicate the military equipment of Latin American nations. Coincidence? Hardly. Venezuela has one of the largest fleets of armored vehicles in South America. Russian T-72 tanks, BMP-3 armored vehicles, S-300 anti-aircraft systems, Soviet equipment. Exactly the type of arsenal the A-10 was designed to annihilate. In Caracas, the reaction was immediate. The Venezuelan Ministry of Defense issued statements condemning what it called imperialist provocation. Radars were put on high alert. Sukhoi Su-30 fighter pilots were mobilized for increased patrols. Official rhetoric hardened. But behind the public statements there is real nervousness. Because everyone knows, in a direct confrontation, the Venezuelan Air Force would stand no chance against A-10 squadrons supported by F-16s, MQ-9 Reaper drones, and U.S. electronic warfare systems. Venezuelan tanks, however modern, would become static targets. Venezuela's terrain, with vast plains, jungles, and coastal areas, is ideal for A-10 operations. It was designed to fly low, use the terrain, and attack armored columns before they can react. And this is not abstract theory, it is living memory. In 1991, during the Gulf War, A-10s destroyed more than 1,000 Iraqi tanks, 2,000 military vehicles, and 200 artillery pieces. Many Iraqi soldiers simply abandoned their tanks when they heard the roar of the Warthog's engines approaching. The fear of the A-10 does not come only from its firepower. It comes from the certainty that once it appears on the horizon, there is no escape. And now, that fear is being exported to the Caribbean. But this is not just about an airplane. It's about power, projection, deterrence. Latin America has always been a geopolitical chessboard, and the United States has never hesitated to move its pieces. From the Cold War to the present day, the American military presence in the region has manifested itself in many ways. Naval bases, training of local forces, direct interventions, economic blockades. But now something has changed. China is expanding its economic influence in Latin America. Russia supplies weapons to regional allies. Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua form an axis resistant to American hegemony. And in the midst of it all, strategic resources, Venezuelan oil, Bolivian lithium, fresh water, maritime routes. The Caribbean is no longer just a tourist resort. It is a zone of strategic competition, and that's where the A-10 comes in. This aircraft is not a symbol of random aggression. It is a calculated message. To allies, we are here. We are ready. To adversaries, don't test our will. The A-10 represents what the U.S. military calls deterrence by demonstrated capability. It is not necessary to attack. It is enough to show that you can attack, and that if you do, it will be devastating. When an A-10 destroys a tank in a training exercise, it is not only seen by the U.S. military, it is seen by Russian satellites, by Chinese analysts, by Venezuelan generals. And they understand the message. But there is a risk. Demonstrations of force can deter, but they can also escalate tensions. They can create cycles of action and reaction. They can turn preparation into a self-fulfilling prophecy. History is full of moments when routine military exercises turned into preludes to real conflicts. The Cuban Missile Crisis began this way. The invasion of Ukraine in 2022 was preceded by exercises on the border. So the question remains, how far will this go? As the roar of the A-10 echoes across the Caribbean skies, the world watches. Some see protection, others see a threat. But everyone recognizes one undeniable truth. American military power remains unmatched. And when that power moves, nations tremble. The A-10 Warthog is more than an aircraft. It is a symbol of brutal engineering, of strategic will, of an empire that, even decades after the end of the Cold War, still knows how to use fear as a tool of foreign policy. But while training tanks are destroyed in remote firing ranges, millions of people in Latin America live their lives. They work, they love, they dream, and they wonder what future awaits them in a region where warplanes train for battles that everyone hopes will never happen. The militarization of the Caribbean is not inevitable, but it is real, and it is happening now before our eyes. So what comes next? It depends on choices, on dialogue, on leaders who decide to put diplomacy before destruction. But it also depends on you, on each of us who observes, questions, and demands answers. Because in the end, the roar of the A-10 in the Caribbean skies is not just a sound. It is a reminder that power, when unchecked, can turn into danger. And that peace, when not defended, can be just the silence before the storm. If this documentary made you think, share it. If it raised questions, research it. If it caused concern, talk about it. Because the future of Latin America will not be decided only in Pentagon war rooms or presidential palaces. It will be decided by all of us, while the sky still echoes.